Oh, what? I don't even have to say it. What is shaking, guys? Mark Cordone here. Yeah, that's what it sounds like before the show starts. That's what it sounds like. We've got everything set up. I'm so glad that we got the show launched today because this one is a big one. This is a big one because it's more than just about writer's block that we're talking about today. We are talking about things like anxiety. The things that block you from writing, things that get in your way from taking those next steps in life. And you know what? Who better than the anxiety pro himself? The anxiety pro and the anxiety prone one himself, and two-time author whose book releases today. Your book is The End of Writer's Block. Ramses Rodriguez has helped over 200 people end their own writer's block, and you're here today to help us with talking about ending writer's block, maybe getting some nuggets from that new book that launches today, and also at the same time, just kind of talking about how life has been for you. You look great, man.
Thank you. You do too. It's been a year, I think.
Game recognized game, son. And look at that Academy over there. I mean, it's the freaking Grammys over there.
Yeah. So it's been a wild ride.
I think the last time we talked, you weren't on yet. You weren't on board with the author incubator yet. You were one of the you were writing your book about panic attacks. And here we are. 200 plus clients later, and you're not only like keeping the panics in check, but also helping over 200 people. How's that been for you?
Well, it's been an amazing ride. This book right now, I put it out like you kind of just read, and probably by this point we've helped definitely over 200 people, just me, myself, as being part of the team. And I wrote this book for a lot of the clients that we have. Most of them are coaches. So I wrote this book with a coach in mind who's trying to write and put all their tips, tricks, and ideas into a book finally. And usually what it looks like is something like this, Mark, where they might sit down and then they go overwhelmed. And that's the kind of writer's anxiety. And that's really why I was brought on board, because I was just really in the field of anxiety and panic attacks. And what better kind of person than a panic attack coach to come in and help with the writing anxiety. So I came in and created this book based on just the things that I brought to the table and helping and adding to the Author Incubator's workflow.
Now, I do have to tell you that all through school, from second grade all the way through my PhD program, I didn't finish one paper. Even the papers that were like 2.5 pages to 5 pages, I would always submit less than, because the whole thing felt like I was in fight, flight, or freeze the whole time. And like I'd do like 3 lines and stop, walk away from it, look at the paper. Suddenly I'd look at the time. Like it was hellish. And it actually wasn't until my Author Incubator experience that I finished a damn book, and I finished a good one, and so is that something that I always thought that I was different, because I looked around and I'm like, man, everybody writes so well, and their prose is the way that they want it to be, and I write in bits and spurts, and it's full of anxiety, and then when I read it, it's shit.
I know, it's kind of how that. I actually have to agree with you, and I'm gonna, since in the spirit of transparency here, Mark, one of the things that I really don't admit often is that in grad school I did a master's. My thesis I didn't finish at all. Mm-hmm. I ended up changing a program and doing a comp exam instead. I'd written 3/4 of my thesis for my master's, and I got writer's block. Mm. And what I did in this book, and the end of writer's block, is I defined something called high-stakes writing situations. And it turns out these moments, like for you is your PhD or all your papers, For the authors who work with us, it's completing a book.
Yeah.
For others, it's simply copywriting for their company if they're an entrepreneur.
Right.
Anything that has high stakes that, in this case, I mean, has the potential really getting you a lot of new clients, potential for getting revenue, or just really making an impact. Those moments are the ones where writer's block really kicks in the most, all right? And so this book, I put it together really with that thought in mind, because situations, it does feel like we have a lot to lose, and then it actually adds pressure to it, to that situation.
Absolutely.
And guess what is not right more? We continue that even more.
Absolutely. No, I found an adaptation to that, and the adaptation was, instead of writing about what they wanted me to write about, I wrote about whatever the hell I wanted and made it fun. And so, like, they wanted me to talk about qualitative and quantitative growth, right? And so I was like, let me talk about World of Warcraft, and then I'd bring it back at the very end, so it didn't feel as anxiety prone, and it all, like, you know, it also made the advisors make me think that I was kind of like this genius that could pull these things together. But I wouldn't call myself that. I would say it was more of an adaptation. When it came to high stakes writing, though, like for my comps were written comps, and I failed. I failed my written comps. And it was because it wasn't because of anything except for, it was high stakes writing. I came in, I knew I was going to crumble under the pressure. And so that was already one thing, is like, I'm failing, my mindset. Then the second thing was, I know that I'm not great with words. And so I needed to draw first. And then I would write what I saw. And that, then I couldn't, like, cause I couldn't talk about World of Warcraft. You know, I could when I went back to Author Incubator, but like I couldn't do that in grad school, and I found it very difficult. You know, I want to go to a couple things first. We started off really wildly, and so for those of you who have not met me, and for the 200 plus of you that know Ramses, my name is Mark Cordone. I'm a positive psychology coach, founder of the Joy Revolution. I'm an incubated author of Beyond Resilient. It's one of my most proud moments is finishing that book and rereading it and coming back to it. And you always see things that you could change, but I'm so proud of that book, from soup to nuts. I put everything into that, and I'm just so proud of that work. But more so on a daily basis, you know this, Ramsey. I've been doing the same shtick for a whole year now. So you know what I'm going to ask you. On a daily basis, I get to ask people the same two questions, and it's this: positive psychology is so easy, no writer's block involved, because I get to ask, how happy are you today, and how much are you living in your purpose? So, Pharaoh Ramses. How much are you living in your purpose, and how happy are you today, man? Look at that chest. I mean, look at that deep V. That is a deep V we got going on, man.
I actually feel really, really happy. Scale of 1 to 10, I would say it's a 10. Amazing. Right now in this moment, because I'm having a blast, and it's not a 10 that you would think. It doesn't feel like sparkly and magical. It just feels like really grounded, and I really like that.
Yeah.
I feel really connected and present with you, sharing this moment. Yeah. And that's a moment, that's a feeling I never thought I would attain.
Now talk about your purpose. How much are you living in your purpose right now?
All the way. I just really, people say, wow, you're always connected with us, you're always coaching, you're always there supporting us 24/7, it seems. And I say, I'm not tired of one moment, and that's how I know.
Yeah. That is definitely how you know. That grounded happiness is so much different than the happiness that people think that positive psychology is about. Like, they think it's all about the 24/7 shits and giggles. Ramses, riding on that incubator pony, throwing Skittles out of your shirt. No, it's not about that. Actually, there's a professor from Harvard who says if you're feeling 24/7 happy, you're one of two things: you're dead, or you're a sociopath. And so
Yeah.
life really is about the ups, downs, and all arounds. It's about how to handle that writer's block. It's about finishing and savoring, not just feeling relief when you're done. It feels, on paper, it feels like there was a jump between your first book, which was about getting control of panic and anxiety, and then the second book, which is about writer's block. But I've already kind of let the cat out of the bag. I feel like there's not that much of a jump.
Believe it or not, there's not.
Yeah.
I think when Dr. Angela and I were talking about me joining the team and contributing to the work she's doing here, it made logical sense for me to come on because, like I said earlier, being in the world of panic attacks and anxiety, what writer's block is, in its essence, is a form of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So when I put this book together, it was like the best of both worlds. It's like, what did I bring from my private practice as a panic attack coach?
Yeah.
What are we doing here? And then this new kind of like systematized way of kind of getting people into writing and flow and ease kind of came about. And I just said, hey, let's put it in a book. In fact, actually, it woke me up. The idea kept waking me up at night. And I was like, I think I just got to write it, Angela. So I just wrote it.
You know what's really interesting is I heard that if you're waking up in the middle of the night and it's like this, and I'm not super woo. I'm not as woo as a lot of people think I am, but there is some interesting things about. It's oftentimes there's an idea that keeps waking you up, and you have a choice. Do you want to act on that idea, or do you want to go back to sleep? And if you make the choice, put your feet on the ground, and it grounds you to start doing the work. You know, and so it's really interesting that you do that. Now, I do want to ask you, in writing this book, did you get writer's block while writing it?
Question. I knew you were going to ask this question. To a lesser extent, yes, but one of the things you're going to learn through my book and the process that I do is how to kind of really get out of a funk really quickly, right?
Okay.
But so I'm pretty versed at spotting when I'm kind of getting there where something feels like a bit of writer's block, where I might either get a little overwhelmed or I kind of start thinking about circumstances as my cause for not writing. For example, oh my God, it's too cold outside. I can't write now. I need to go and take a bath. And then I just use that as an excuse. I get good at I'm onto myself, right?
Yeah.
A lot better. But one of the things that also happened was I did virtually what you did, what you just said. I had this idea. I planned it one weekend, executed it the next weekend. Mark, I spent 19 and a half hours writing the manuscript for this, and I was done. I just cranked it out. I didn't really give myself time. So I wrote this book. I had this idea of a post when I was going to announce I wrote this. I was going to say, whoops, I wrote another book in the weekend. Something like that. It really happened organically. It just spilled out of me. And when people think of writing and flow, I think that's what they think. And it just so happened that that's almost really how it happened for me. I wrote this in almost off flow state with little writer's block, only because part of the reason is I was implementing the same tools I was writing. So
that's really, really cool. It's almost as if you don't give yourself time to overthink it. And when you don't give yourself time to overthink it, right? Or like I love the fact that you talk about inputs and outputs, right? Very, very Viktor Frankl-esque, right? Where it's almost like, oh, it's raining today. Not a good day to write. You know, you're letting your inputs dictate your outputs. And there's a gap in between your inputs and outputs. And if you can identify that gap, you can separate the inputs from the outputs and not be affected by it. Writing is writing, and writing is writing, and that's the bottom line. And I think that's a nice little metaphor for life. And I think this is what I'm already looking at the notes on this book. I'm like, yeah, I'm downloading this motherfucker. I think it's a nice metaphor for life. I didn't get a good night's rest last night. My launch, I'm working overtime for my launch. I'm doing certain things, and wasn't feeling well today. And then our tech was down. All of those things could have been great excuses for me to say, let's nix it. And I remember sitting down and saying, what needs to happen right now? And that was the space. And I was like, this is a person who's launching a book. And I'm a person who says that I am, that I serve others through this show. I need to show the fuck up, and it's the same thing with writing, it's like all these inputs.
Yeah.
If you cut it, you still have all this capacity to get your outputs out there. It's amazing. It's a little bit cognitive behavioral therapy that you're doing there. Like you're just.
That is my chapter 3, buddy.
Oh, are you serious, dog? You think I don't know that shit, man? Just because I'm a positive psychologist? Of course I know cognitive behavioral therapy.
I was just sure to spill the beans, Mark. I talk about that, and you're right. I do, because I come from a genetics background, believe it or not. A lot of people don't know that. They just remember maybe my first book as a panic attack coach.
Yeah.
But I got into the world of coaching as a scientist first, and so I remember studying a lot of neuropsychology, a lot of cognitive behavior, and then CBD, because I did a lot of couch time. And so, and I end up talking a little bit about the context of writer's block within the context of this cognitive behavioral therapy, right? And so how is it that these moments, day to day, these circumstances we have, we're letting them dictate overall what the final result we want will be? Yep. It's incredible. And when you're onto your brain, you kind of, I follow a life coach, Brooke Castillo. She calls the brain, the unattended brain is like a child running with knives. It's an incredible image, but it's
sounds like Brooke.
Messy, and we get kind of reckless. And then guess what? Our goals get abandoned because we can end up trading temporary discomfort because of our thoughts about writing at this moment for the long-term effect of actually accomplish writing a book. And I have the honor of literally holding space for people and walking them through this process of concept to done.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah. Now, let me ask. Gotcha on the the cognitive behavioral therapy, because I was like, this total cognitive behavioral therapy stuff, man. This is amazing. It's applied to writer's block. So good. Now I wanted to ask. I know that there's a sometimes Dr. Angela and the author incubator will talk about styles, bursters versus plotters, and it feels like this is more. To burst is more conducive to people who are anxiety prone. But I also know that there's plotters who write in bits and sections, little pieces every day, who can also have anxiety. How do you address that with someone who, maybe they got brain fog, and they have to write in little sections every day. But when they do have that 15 minutes to write, they're anxiety prone. Like, is it the same approach?
Yeah, so the root ends up being the issue here. So it's not a matter of what is causing you to have anxiety. I like to lean into what's causing you to have the anxiety despite your stylistic approach to writing. So yeah, within the context of what Angela has created here at the Author Incubator, which is a brilliant process, she does talk about the writer's mojo, she calls it. It's kind of a fun name for basically what's your comfort level in writing? Do you like to write indoors, outdoors? Do you like to write in the mornings? And do you like to, say write all at once, or do you like to plan it out, right? And she says one thing that is stuck with me forever and ever and forever and ever and ever. She said, the way you do some things is the way you do all things. So if in college you wrote all your papers the night before, you're going to tend to produce
Continue to do it. Yeah.
Right. And so, but that just ends up being stylistic, right?
Yeah.
The anxiety, though, what if we take a moment to sit down with someone who's anxious about writing? I like to ask powerful questions like, why do you think this is coming up right now? The moment you decide to embark on a magical or big journey, or like I said, a high stakes project, which has the potential of high yield, maybe a large return on your investment. And now is when it decides to show up. Now is when you decide to get anxious, right? Because overall, writing a book is fairly easy. You know, we write our book in 24 to 48 hours here,
yeah.
and most people are floored. But the issue is, it's because if you're going to address the writer's block, let's address the root cause and not make it about writing. Let's not make it about a circumstance. Let's find out why it's coming up for you.
I love that. Now all of a sudden you're talking about like some of the unconscious things that are that come from self-sabotage and growth and fear of, well, what might I become if this actually affects a lot of people, and where might I go with this, and the brain, or whatever you want to call it, the unconscious, whatever, feels unsafe. And so it tries to make you play safe by saying, well, there's all this other shit that you need to take care of. You know, you need to go back to your daily life and live that. You address that in the book too? You son of a bitch. You son of a bitch. This is like the book of life.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If I really wanted to give you tactics on how to write efficiently, that's just weird, because, to be honest, most people, we've had people who are dyslexic. We had people who have English as a second language. We had people who are just quite literally traumatized from their English teacher in high school, who always gave them red felt tipped F's on their...
Yeah, baby.
Like, yeah, right? And so those are all these things that we could use, and everyone has their version of a writer's block, but the tactics are simple. Put a sentence together, write many of them, those are called paragraphs, put them all together, you got a chapter, and then just keep writing and writing and writing. Writing is not technically difficult if we fundamentalize it, or if we take a reductionist approach. It's really just putting words on paper.
So do you feel like we romanticize finding your voice? Or is there really an art to finding your voice, and how much is voice and sort of an authentic voice related to anxiety, lack thereof, writer's block, or lack thereof?
That's a powerful question, because it depends who you're asking. I imagine my English teacher having a different answer than I would have right now. Right?
Fuck your English teacher.
It's very artistic. Finding your voice is like this magical moment. I think finding your voice is when you can have an actual conversation with your intended writer, and that message lands.
Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Do you see that? It's much more functional definition I like to take, because it makes it attainable. Like, all I have to do is clearly communicate to my intended audience member.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
It's sender and receiver. The sender is responsible for a clear, crisp message that the receiver can pick up and quickly understand.
Right.
I like that. Your English teacher is hitting the thumbs down right now. Don't hit that thumbs down, man. You hate her? You hate her?
I give her a lot of... She was an amazing teacher, but I could imagine her definition being very kind of artsy, more fluffed up to be. And I like to take a very pragmatic approach to writing, because I do think within our own messages, everyone who has this kind of idea or spread their message or big wish for themselves and people they want to serve, if we don't have a pragmatic definition, it feels like we can't make a stamp in this world. It just...
Yep, absolutely.
I need a very grounded definition for the people, because they do come with the trauma of, I can't do this. Who am I to write this message? Who am I to say that I can cure panic attacks?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's and again, it is a metaphor for life. I mean, you know, I'm looking at this right now, and I'm like, I could read this from the standpoint of, you know, one year was the focus was on writing, and the next year was on speaking, right? And I remember the same thing right before I took the TEDx stage was like, who the fuck am I, man? Who am I? It doesn't, it always comes back and stuff. So I do want to ask you this, and maybe we've already answered it, and you have it, you have it gracefully written in prose to veil some of the stuff, but like, I don't know if you know this, but I was a neuroscience major. So like neuroscience and psychology are my jam, and I know we both we talked a little bit about psychology. I think we talked a little bit about neuroscience, but also I want to hear about sort of how to either leverage neuroscience or how we can use our psychological advantages.
This is good. I think here's the thing, and this has to do a lot with the kind of clients I feel that I've served that come to us at the Author Incubator. I do find that we work with a lot more sensitive people, and this is a kind of situation that I feel was mirrored in my private practice as a panic attack coach and within the clients that we attract here at the Author Incubator. And they tend to be very sensitive. A lot of, in the clinical psychology world, we call them highly sensitive people.
HSPs.
Yeah, HSP. And then in the more, I would say, spiritual communities, they just call them empaths. I like to, for the sake of argument, for the sake of simplicity, I like to let's just say these are just sensitive people. Yeah. And in the case of neurobiology, neurophysiology, we know that these individuals have highly active theory of mind centers in the right hemisphere. That's a center responsible for empathizing. And empathizing here meaning the ability simply to get into someone else's shoes, right? Just this ability so you end up seeing something and you feel it in you, right? And they have highly active theory of mind centers. We also know that they also have highly active or more mirror neurons, which is also, we call it the empathy neuron, which you know as well. If the observer is watching a subject, whatever they're doing, they will have a physiological response simply by observing.
Absolutely.
And those cells are firing. And so we know, if we could understand that, we can somehow at least bypass or give ourselves a back door to comfortably writing in flow. We can kind of circumvent that kind of mechanism and that ultimately, really, when it triggers an emotional response, it causes us to go fight, flight, or freeze mode. And so we could essentially get around that by just knowing that our brains are these kinds of people who are empathizing with the world, which is why they are magic makers in the first place. Yeah. We can serve them by just understanding their physiology this way.
That is so really cool, especially given the fact that you know, as an HSP, as an INFP, your basic author incubator client, right? You walk through a lot of life being like, man, I'm so different than everybody, but also at the same time in knowing that the brain, sort of the neurodiversity of the brain is a little bit different for an HSP. That awareness in and of itself gives me comfort. I would also go and say that when it comes to writing, maybe this is what you mean by psychological advantage, but when it comes to writing, it helps me understand my audience.
Yes.
Because I can be in the shoes of my audience and deliver the message. And so I don't have to stand there and, almost be a filibuster or self-aggrandize and not think about the way that this is landing.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I think it's absolutely amazing. I think it's also amazing that you talk about mirror neurons, because that's one of the big. It's one of the big studies in it's one of the big studies right now in positive psychology by the work of Barbara Fredrickson, and another piece to the mirror neurons is that mirror neurons are the ways that a lot of people think that love is this romantic thing where you find someone you ride off into the sunset. Our mirror neurons actually have us in a moment. It's a micro moment of love that we feel with another person, right? So with those mirror neurons, you can almost create that ideal avatar and feel the micro moments of love and write like basically love notes to them, and like it can hit so hard.
Yeah, exactly. We essentially can trigger these emotions, which, as you remember, I use CBT. We can trigger these emotions through this imagining, and that imaginative moment triggers those neurons.
Yep,
causes
absolutely.
Our limbic system to have an emotional response, and from that emotional response, we take action. And so then we
talking about the limbic system. I'm gonna steal you and have you come to the Joy Revolution and be our neuroscience person.
I'd be honored. It's so fun. I love neuroscience. Ultimately, we have to take advantage of this. And I, as the coach, as the lead author success coach here at the Author Incubator, I find that me knowing this, I never really teach this, but I can see what's going on and I know what's going on. And then I could actually help that person get from writer's block to flow state without them even knowing I'm doing a thing under a thing. Me as the coach.
You don't need to show the entire technology of it.
Right.
And actually, I'm sure that a lot of people aren't super interested in the technology. They just want to get it done. It's this thing is waking them up in the middle of the night. It's been calling them for years. It's almost like a life calling, and they can't write more than a paragraph. It's frustrating. And it's really cool. I'm interested in daily habits now, because it's one thing to sort of change the mindset around, like you've been talking about. It's another thing to become aware of the neurodiversity that exists in your mind. But then, how does daily practice affect the way that the way that we're overtaken by writer's block, or the way that we can push through it, or the way that we circumvent around it?
Yeah, I think it's more simple and practical than you would think. I really love to get things very, 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 very simple. Where do you feel comfortable writing? Like, really, just literally thinking about what is the moment you feel that you would want to write the best. And what I mean by that is, oftentimes I have a lot of busy clients here with the Author Incubator team. And what they do is they plan their writing sessions when their gas is on empty. That's the last thing on their agenda. So this is what it looks like. They have a busy life. Maybe they have a side hustle as a coaching practice. They'd like to take it off, right? Make it take off. So from side hustle to main hustle, that's their goal. But then at the end of the day is when they choose to write. They've now gone to work. They've had a fight with the kids about doing homework. They have fed the cat. They made dinner. They cleaned the house. And then at 10:30 p.m., they're like, all right, now I'm going to write my masterpiece. You're on empty. Like, you've actually
completely depleted.
Project as something, so it's going to get the scraps, and when you reread it,
it should.
Right, it feels like crap too. Like, you little, and so imagining why you want to do something, or how it's going to look, or the product. Imagine that, and then give it its due priority. Like, actually schedule time where you're refreshed to write. That's probably a simple day-to-day thing. Is if you prioritize it, it ends up feeling less like the scraps of your day get the
Absolutely. I also heard that neurodiversity wise, that for highly sensitive people, writing early in the morning when there's not a lot of even birds chirping and stuff, like the world is asleep, might be the best time. And if folks might have, I don't want to go against your book, but I wanted to throw that out because it is, you're absolutely right. It's like a lot of people will think that their willpower is and the resilience is unlimited, but it's like having a bowl full of Skittles, like you throw out from your open shirt there, your deep V. You know, every decision you make throughout the day, every conversation that you have, you're taking out of that bowl. And when you write and then the bowl is empty, you have nothing to give as a writer. You know, I think it makes total sense that at least have something in there when you write, and it's true. It's almost especially in college. I think the anxiety would come on. I'd push it off and procrastinate, and then by the time I got to it, there was nothing left. There was literally nothing left. It was 10 o'clock at night, and there was just nothing left, and it was a full blown, you know, shallow breathing. I just could not get my wits around me anymore. It was, yeah, right. So
I agree with you. That was my experience as well. And you were saying highly sensitive people writing at night, or in the morning. I do say that some of my people tend to feel very intuitive is how they describe themselves. And so what they'll say is they are affected by which time of day. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of us, I think, in the morning, and I like that they could at least know. And I think the key is do it when you are going to be most productive.
Yeah. Absolutely. Look at this motherfucker teaching the coach how to coach. I love you, man. I love you. I do want folks to know, and it's in the show notes right now, that ramses.rodriguez.author@gmail.com. Do we have a giveaway?
Oh, yeah. Well, it just so happens that my book is for free today on Amazon. So check it out. It's the end of Writer's Block. Today is the book.
I didn't want to announce it, and you're like, you wanted everyone to buy it. I'm so stoked. George is talking about the limbic system and neuroscience, and Cordone hits the deep V observation. Yeah, but that's George from New York. Thanks for joining us, George. George, I know that you are a writer, George. You might want to email Ramses Rodriguez, ramses.rodriguez.author@gmail.com. Before we give you the golden mic, how is your anxiety and panic? Have you been with that lately?
Me?
Like, yeah,
well,
have you personally been with that? Because
actually, very, very, very well. I'm surprised. I remember Angela literally like a month ago sat down with me casually, and I told her, I looked her right in the eyes, and I said, Angela, I just can't imagine that I would have ever been in this situation where I actually was so grateful for my anxiety. Literally, and I know it sounds super fluffy, but I've learned so much from it. It's not that I don't get anxious, because if someone cuts me off on the road, I'm going to be anxious. Like,
I remember you talked about that the first time you were on the show.
Yeah. It's just like, but then this whole baseline of anxiety, what happens with everything I've taught and everything I've implemented, I used on myself. What I was able to do is essentially bring down that baseline of anxiety so my spikes don't cause me to have panic attacks anymore. And then ultimately what I do with people and writing is their sessions, we need to have that baseline as low as possible so that you're clear and you could let your thoughts, your actual ideas flow out on paper. And there is a way to go from block to flowing in ease.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, this has been an absolute pleasure. For those who are catching the replay, watch it from the beginning. Watch it from the clusterfuck of an intro that was, because that's how it is behind the scenes. But we got things to work. You showed up with the deep V. You got the rolls over the coat. I mean, what more can you ask for? Oh, you can ask for the golden mic. So, Ramses, exactly. I want you to imagine that a golden mic is now coming down from that DC, that beautiful Georgetown ceiling, and landing in front of you. Now, this golden mic, just like your golden pen that you use to write your book, translates into every language all across this multiverse. Every sentient being can hear what you are about to say. Some people will go over their head. Other people have been searching for what you are about to say their entire life. So when I hit the button, Pharaoh Ramses, your golden mic is live. It's live now.
All right, everyone, listen up. I just wrote a book called The End of Writer's Block, and I wrote it for you. And a lot of people want a tip from me, and I'm going to give it to you right now. The tip is to get rid of your panic attacks. Ask yourself one question: what's in it for me? And I know that seems a little counterintuitive, but what I want you to know is that it takes bravery to imagine what you actually want to do with your message. Let yourself take 1 full minute and imagine the impact you make, or what you imagine doing. Are you talking to people? Who are you in front of? Who do you become as a person who wrote this book, or this idea, or this message? And I challenge you to actually consider this, and then see what actually comes of it if you allow yourself to, for a moment, become a person that actually has this problem solved. You wrote a book.
Amazing. The End of Writer's Block. You are quite the special person, man. It is awesome to have you in my life and to connect with you when we have the moments too. I cannot wait to see where you are a year from now when you're back on the show, or I may be on your show. We'll see whatever goes down. I want you to hold that golden mic up, Ramses. Yeah, slam it, man. Congratulations on the book. The book is out today. We're giving it out for free. Just email Ramses, and his email is in the show notes. And on behalf of Ramses and myself, Golden Mike, I can't read what number it is. Oh, Golden Mike 211 is officially over. So I have one more question for you, and it's this. If you're feeling happy and you're living your life's purpose, what is your responsibility to changing history for the better? Ramses Rodriguez, Mark Cordone, we'll see you soon. Boom.